is back, and I am here with iRogan. iRogan, is that how you say your name?
Official way to say it. Most people say Irogen, but yeah, go for it. Whatever you like.
iRogan. I always said iRogan. I guess iRogen sounds better though. So we are still waiting for a couple of guests still. So Kobe, aka Slick Moth, he is going to be here in a few minutes, and then Salvage from his YouTube channel, he should be here in a few minutes as well. But I was told just to go forward and get things started. So today we are going to be discussing Gotham Knights. It feels like I've been talking about this game for 5 years, even though I think it's been 2 years right now since the very first trailer. So it's 5 days away, and I can't really believe that we're finally getting this game coming out. And I wanted to get the gang together and just discuss our final thoughts on the game before its release. There has been, I don't want to say controversy over this game, but there have been people who haven't been very happy what they've been hearing. People have been very down on the game. But my first question I want to ask, and I'm going to ask all the guests as they come in, iRogan, what are your thoughts on Gotham Knights right now? Are you excited? Are you apprehensive about it? Are you just thinking, I'm not even... You're obviously going to play the game, but where are you at right now with your feelings towards this game?
So I'm really excited. Like you, this game since Arkham Knight. I remember and this is kind of a problem for me, is anticipated game. A lot of times I already start anticipating, even on my first playthrough, like, this is going to look like. And Arkham Knight was such an impressive tentpole release after Arkham City, and just it was such a big step up in terms of quality. The other games were great just took full advantage of the Xbox One and PS4, and so I was what the next Arkham game would look like. And now Gotham Knights obviously isn't an Arkham game, but to finally get another open world Gotham City experience in the AAA gaming space, there are things that I do have reservations about, but less because I'm sense that I think that Warner Brothers Games Montreal hasn't done a great job, but more in that Rocksteady just in so many creative ways with the Arkham games that it's just, and I think that Arkham is just such a tough act to follow. So many of us consider Arkham to essentially be the dream take on Batman, and to this day that's kind of where I put Arkham. Like I hold it. So Gotham Knights, in many ways, I think mostly from a gameplay and art style perspective, debate whether or not it's an improvement or not so much an improvement. That being said, I just am really excited to explore the city. It looks like they have spent a lot of time in the ecosystem of this map. It looks like it's much bigger than the previous games, and cover everything, see what villains are involved, and play as these Bat family characters. Kind of where I'm at. I'm very excited. I'm heavily anticipating it, and then a lot of the things people out, like I'm sure that we'll get into the frame rate situation at some point.
Yeah.
Personally, I've always played games on like fidelity, 30 frames per second, just by default. I do like my 4K ray tracing, so that for me, it's not really. Other people who've gotten accustomed to 60 frames per second are bummed out. I think that this game just hits beats that it doesn't hit aren't deal breakers for me, but it has been interesting because, like, one final thing I'll add just to kind of my initial take on Gotham Knights is, like, now you had to like really scour the internet to find people who were negative about the game, whereas with Gotham did, and so that has been a very different approach to the hype going into this game, is that it very much is still there, but there's also a lot more controversy, whereas previously that wasn't so much the case. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm very excited to check.
Okay, I hate to cut you off here, but I've got some people in the chat saying that your audio is cutting in and out. Is there anything you could do to maybe fix that? Like, is it your browser or?
Am I coming through on your end, or is it saying that, or am I coming in and out
You're
on your
cutting
end.
out a bit on my you're cutting out a bit on my end as well.
Okay. Let me try to join on another browser. I'll be right back.
Okay, I'll just talk to the people while
Cool.
you are doing it. So yeah. So thank you guys for joining. Irogen will be right back while he fixes the audio, and we will see more of that. Slickmoth will be on in a few minutes, like I said, and I'm still waiting to hear from Salvage. He is supposed to come on. But in the meantime, so I'm glad to hear some positivity on the part of Irogen because Darth Vader, hey, I'm just here for Kobe. Okay. So so I'm happy to see some positivity on his side. He'll be right back for those who just joined. I actually just got done with seeing some hate posts. Here he's coming back. Take two. Okay, Irogen, you're in. Let's see if your audio is better.
Um.
I think I'm hearing you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that any better? I tried a different browser and different Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it sounds better right now.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, so I was just talking to them how I liked hearing some of your positivity on the game because I just got done reading some hate posts on Twitter over the game, over how they hate what the gameplay looks like, and of course, people have been losing their minds on the 30 frames per second thing. I'm overall looking forward to it. I'm pretty easy to please when it comes to video games. They just have to be playable to me. The two games I've ever had the worst experiences with were the Avengers. What was it? Right now I'm blanking on what like Epic's. Why am I blanking on the name of the company that made the Avengers game? I don't know why.
Square Enix.
Square Enix. That's what it is. That was
Yeah.
one of the worst experiences I've had, probably with a superhero game because I couldn't even figure out what it wanted. I couldn't play it correctly, and so I just gave up quickly. And apparently, like 80% of the gamers that were playing that game dropped off after they completed like the story mode because there was just nothing else to it. So that was a pretty bad experience. This might seem like an obscure reference, but I remember getting Sonic Lost World when I was younger, and I hated that game. But otherwise, like I don't really hate video games for the gameplay that much, so I'm pretty easy to please. So if Gotham Knights is at least playable, if it's not an Avengers experience, that's what I really don't want. I don't want an experience that I had like with Square Enix's I can't even speak, but I don't want to experience like I had with that game. Like if Gotham Knights is just better than the Avengers game, then I'll be perfectly happy with that. I do understand though how people get hung up on the 30 frames versus 60 frames thing because it is meant for PlayStation, and that's kind of one of the sells of PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 is you're supposed to have 60 frames per second. You're supposed to be able to play it on your 4K TV. You need a 4K TV to play it. So I understand like it's part of the packaging, and I think it's just another thing that that people because there's been various things. I remember there was a cutscene. I don't know if you've seen this cutscene. I think it was the very first one they released where Dick Grayson is talking to Barbara Gordon, and
Yes.
it's really cheesy. And I saw it and I didn't care for it. And then my brother was watching it and he was just yelling at me, "This is awful. This is horrible." And I'm like, I want to be hopeful for this game. So, but then I saw some other cutscenes recently, like. They showed a bit of Batgirl going in to talk to Harley, and before that, she talks to the team, and I thought that looked really good. So I think they should have led with that if they were going to advertise this game. But how have you been feeling about like what you've seen of the story? Do you think that it just seems like a CW Gotham Knights sort of thing, or are you enjoying what you've seen of the story so far?
I think I'm with you in the sense that there are cutscenes that look pretty cringe to me,
Mm-hmm.
and that I don't think there's much getting around that. I know that there's a lot of people who really defend this game a lot, and as excited as I am for the game, and the story is one of the most intriguing elements to me just because they've kept it so secret. There are those moments that kind of make me wince when I hear some of the dialogue that was chosen or some of the like takes that they chose. So but with that being said, I mean, even my favorite games of all time usually have a few exchanges between characters that aren't my favorite. And I think that the problem is that when marketing this game, like I mentioned, they've been trying to keep the story so secret that they've been showing some of those more like mundane moments. Like I'd imagine that isn't a like integral cutscene to the story. That's probably kind of an optional dialogue piece that you can go have while you're hanging out in the belfry.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, I mean, kind of a way that I would look at that is like imagine if Red Dead Redemption 2 released a cutscene before launch where it was just, Arthur going and chatting with one of the guys in the camp or something. It's like not really a big part of the story or anything, but it is a piece of the game. I think Gotham Knights has just kept the main campaign so secret. But I think, like you mentioned, like when they're talking with villains or when they are kind of out in the city, those seem to be where the dialogue really shines. And that's where I think it's really important. And I'm hoping that in the Belfry, some of those potentially cheesier moments will be carried just by the chemistry between the knights and that those relationships between them.
Okay, since we're talking about the relationships between the characters, and I apologize that my other two guests still aren't here. I've heard from one of them who's still on his way, and the other one I'm still waiting on. But let's get in to talk about the villains of Gotham Knights, because so far it looks like there's only like 3 villain side quests. We know obviously this has been advertised as a Court of Owls sort of thing, and then we've seen Penguin teased, but they've been heavily advertising like Mr. Freeze, Clayface, and Harley as these big side villain quests. And I, from what I'm generally seeing, people seem to like what the villains that we have, but they're questioning why aren't there more of them? Why are there only 3 people? And I just had this thought, and I don't think it's true, but I want to bring it up to you. Do you think that this means that the game is shorter than we think? And I hope not. I've just had experiences before where people will be all hyped to this game and it'll be really expensive. They'll buy it and it'll actually be really, really short. So, what are you thinking about the villains? Do you think that they're just leading with those 3 and that those quests will be bigger than we think? Or do you think that there's other villains that they're just not showcasing yet?
So I actually did a video. This was my most recent video on my YouTube channel because what's really interesting is those 3 villains that you just mentioned. Not only are they kind of the 3 that they've been advertising, but on a recent Q&A on their Discord, they kind of almost tease that these are the only 3 major villain side quests in the game. So like not only are these the 3 that they've chosen to market, but that like, yeah, there might be another side mission here or there and another villain might pop up in the main story or in a shorter side mission. But in terms of these big long arcs, these might be the only 3. I think that it's a pretty decent selection. I think Mr. Freeze is iconic, albeit, the Arkham games did him really well. I don't know that I needed another video game interpretation of him so soon. I think what they're doing with Harley Quinn is pretty interesting. I'll give them that. I also think that Clayface was a character that we didn't get enough of in video game format, so I'm excited to see what they do with him. From what I understand, the main campaign is pretty long.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of what they've teased. So here's kind of what I'm anticipating in terms of length. My guess is the main story will be around the length of Spider-Man PS4. So we're probably looking between 10 to 20 hours, just depending on how quickly you go through it. I think in the open world, each of these side missions, I'd say will probably range from between 2 to 4 hours long. So a lot of open world content. And then on top of these villain quests, you're also, I'm sure, going to have like collectibles. You're going to have like Court of Owls bases to take out. So I think that there will be a lot of content in the game, and especially as you start like learning about the premeditated crimes that are going to happen the following night in Gotham, and as you plan your attacks in the Belfry or your strategy in the Belfry, I think that you are going to get quite a bit of replay value as well, getting to replay the game as each of the nights. So I think that there's a lot of content packed in here, but I will say that I am somewhat hesitant to jump into the idea that these will be the only 3 major side quests in the game, at least narratively speaking. Again, it's just a very different gameplay loop from Arkham, where Arkham had many side missions and many villains, but we were getting like 5 to 20-minute long side missions kind of across the board. Whereas here we're looking at like hours long side missions, but then there's less of them. one thing that has crossed my mind is this might be a way for them to usher in a lot of DLC. Like this might be a way for the base game to have Harley, Clayface, Mr. Freeze, and then, maybe 2 months after the game, it's like, oh, we have Bane, Poison Ivy, and Scarecrow that we're going to add to the game post-launch for $10 or something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I honestly can't imagine that they wouldn't pull out the Joker and be like, guys, Joker DLC, just because DC and WB are shameless about the Joker. They will put him in everything. They will dangle him in everything to try to get people to buy it. So even if and they haven't said where he is. I don't know. Have you heard anything that they've said where the Joker is? They just mentioned him, like that he went through his whole thing with Jason and Harley in one of the cutscenes. Have you heard any rumors about where the Joker is? If he's dead, if he disappeared from Gotham?
So all that I know for sure is that the developers have said he's not in the game when journalists have asked about him. And then I've also I haven't confirmed this yet, but I heard from someone else who was like at the previews when Warner Brothers Games Montreal flew some YouTubers out to play it. From what I understand, I haven't seen the clip myself, but I guess one of the YouTubers asked about Joker and they said he's dead. So he's supposedly dead or missing in this game.
Okay, so then maybe there won't be DLC. It just surprises me because in the past I'm just used to whenever they say like Batman and Joker are dead, like they bring them back. So I'll talk about a little bit more about the villains in a minute, but since we're just kind of on the topic of dead characters, do you think that Batman is truly dead, that they're going to commit to that, or do you think that there's going to be some kind of twist?
So first, this one's kind of tricky for me to answer, but I do have something to input. I will say, and this has gotten much worse today. There are spoilers out. I've avoided most of them, but there are, people who DM me wanting to get my take on things. First of all, please don't DM me spoilers. I want to go into this game as fresh as I possibly can. But in terms of how they've set up Bruce Wayne's death and Batman's death, initially I thought, oh, he's 100% coming back. And, not only that, but I could see there being like some DLC after where you get to play as Batman, or maybe he'll be added to the playable character roster, and maybe they're just being misleading about it. But the more that I've thought about it, the more that I actually like the direction of them going, where Bruce is, dead, or, just not going to be playable, in the sense that I like the idea of all the other elements of Gotham being showcased. Because, again, I know I keep bringing up the Arkham series, but that's kind of our point of reference for Batman games. And we just got a 4-game arc about Batman's dynamic with the Joker. And so to remove the 2 pieces from the board, I think will really highlight the Bat family and the other villains and the other characters of Gotham. So there is a big part of me that's hoping that he doesn't necessarily come back into the fray. I do think he probably, I think they will commit to it pretty heavily. I think that he is pretty much out of the picture. Again, I have some vague ideas potentially just because I've heard some alleged spoilers about it. But my hope is that they do stick pretty heavily to him being dead, just because I feel like it would be something of a cop-out if by the end of the game he's back and operating as he was at the beginning of the game or before the game starts.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of those times. I'm a person who usually likes things to be as traditional as possible. Like have it the traditional status quo of the characters. This is a case though where I'm kind of glad that Batman and Joker are out of the picture, and I hope that that stays the case because I like the dynamic seeing Dick Grayson and Barbara and Tim and Jason kind of have to form this team, and they have a whole dynamic that's very different when Batman's not in the picture. I also like seeing, like, I want to venture as far to say secondary villains kind of rise up and be like the major villains of this game. I'm looking forward to Mr. Freeze getting some spotlight again. He is actually a very difficult character to do because there's actually not a lot of comics. I don't know how much you read comics, but there's actually not a lot of like great, well-regarded Mr. Freeze stories because they can't really do much beyond the story of him and his wife, and that's from Heart of Ice. So that's kind of what is always done over and over again. And so I'm glad to see him getting the spotlight in this game. I'm really glad to see Clayface getting the spotlight again. That's kind of a character who I feel has been neglected, and that could be because we have so much like DC shows and DC movies. It's very difficult to get a character like Clayface right and have to deal with all the special effects of that. But I appreciate them putting him in this game. I actually, because I watched the scene of Barbara talking to Harley, and I actually really, really liked it because anyone who watches my channel knows that I am constantly raving and ranting about how I don't like the direction Harley has gone in various media. The manic pixie dream girl, that's all she is now. They've made just so many changes to her. But I really like what I've seen from this game because I feel like they've found a way to make her more independent in this game as they're trying to do, but make it also feel natural to this universe because she is independent from the Joker, but she's also seriously messed up. She is very bitter and very spiteful, and they've done that in the comics, but they've done it in a way as if that makes her good now. Like, if it's a good thing that she's so bitter and spiteful and we're supposed to root for her, no. She's still a very messed up person, and I felt like they were, doing sort of the nasally voice and the kind of the woman child antics that she does, but they were doing it in a way that makes her a bit unsettling and a bit menacing, not in a very annoying way. So I really have been enjoying that so far, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm glad that there was a rumor like 2 years ago that Harley Quinn was going to be DLC, like you could play her as a member of the Bat family, and I'm so glad that that isn't true. I'm so glad that that turned out to be false. So we're going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here because I wanted to speak on this. One of the things, and you and I seem like we're both pretty positive on this game, unlike some other people. But one of the things that I'm actually very positive about on the game is that the fact that it's actually coming out, in contrast to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, was supposed to come out in 2021, and then it was supposed to come out in 2022. And I guess it's coming out next year, but I'm not sure because they were acting like it was for sure coming out in 2021. And now I have no idea if it's even going to come out or not because they keep delaying it, and it seemed like it was almost done. So it's so weird to me that. So I know this is a little bit of an unrelated note, but what about Kill the Justice League? Do you think keeps putting it out away in the ocean so far away, and how we never really get to see that game released?
Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up. I may be wrong. From what I understand, I think that one might have initially been a 2022 release, kind of from the get-go. I know they revealed it in 2020. I could be wrong on that, but I do know there's been a delay or two on it. I think, unfortunately, just the era of COVID kind of delayed everything a few years. And that's why, like, we're finally getting things again. But there was kind of that 2-year gap where the games and movies coming out were very, like, independent, very like, not these big AAA or big blockbuster experiences because the studios didn't want to put things out when, people were all working from home and it was harder to get things made, or there wasn't as much guarantee that people would go to a theater to see stuff. So, but I think more than that, I think that the direction of DC games is going, it essentially went from a drought to like, we're about to get a rainstorm, and that we're getting Gotham Knights, and then Suicide Squad is on the way as well. And now we have Wonder Woman coming from Monolith. And I think that there was probably some discussion going on as to what the best release would be for each of those, like how to stagger those releases. I don't know if Wonder Woman is going to try to take place in the continuity of either Gotham Knights or of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Wonder Woman looks like a pretty major character in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, so I don't know if her solo game is going to branch off of that, but I haven't read enough into that one. But ultimately, I think that, Gotham Knights delay probably didn't help Suicide Squad either, just in that you can only release so many games a year. They had Hogwarts Legacy. Earlier this year, they had Lego Star Wars. That was actually a Warner Brothers produced title, since they owned Lego at that time. So to have that game, Gotham Knights, and Hogwarts Legacy, I think adding another game into this year and another DC game, and especially where Gotham Knights had to release later in the year, I think you'd be putting two AAA DC games too close together, and you'd start seeing some of that competition against themselves. And so my notion has always kind of been that Suicide Squad was maybe in a state to release, maybe not quite yet. Um, and they just moved it to 2023, probably to make sure Gotham Knights has the room it needs to breathe. But also, again, I think that with Rocksteady and with many other studios, they're working with brand new technology. They're working with new game engines. They're working with new software for the consoles, and they're trying to optimize it. And I think that a lot of them have run into some difficulties doing that. And so my guess is we are probably going to get it next year. I will actually be very disappointed if they delay it again. Like if this becomes a 2024 release, I'm not going to be very happy about that. But I don't know. I think Rocksteady knocks it out of the park every time they make a game. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I'm definitely bummed that we didn't get that game this year and Gotham Knights in 2021 when it was supposed to come out. So yeah, it's been a bummer waiting, but I'm glad we're finally starting to kind of reap the rewards of that wait.
Okay, we are at the 30-minute mark. I am just going to text Kobe really quick.
Sounds good.
See it. Sorry for the delay. I'm just texting. Let me see. Okay, just texting. Sorry about that, folks. Salvage has not been able to make it. He may come on another stream. I apologize for that. Kobe is still on his way. I apologize for the false advertising. It looks like it didn't work out. But anyway, thank you for coming on, Jake. Or Hirogen. Oh, you got a text. Got a text. Okay, okay. Okay, he's going to be coming in 8 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, just wanted to make sure where he was at. Okay, the long-expected Slick Moth will finally be here. Anyway, let me go back to my notes, what we are talking about. We've talked about this game in comparison to Kill the Justice League. We've talked about the villains of the game. Okay, here's a question that I wanted to ask. Do you think, because Gotham Knights, I think, has had kind of a struggle where I think everyone was really hyped by that initial trailer from DC Fandom when it first came out, and I was happy about it, but things have gradually gotten more negative towards this game. People now seem like there's probably going to be a lot of people hate playing it. So what I'm wondering about is the hate for this game the various has it been because of the delays? Has it been because of disappointing? Has it been because of the cutscenes? Has it been because of the various disappointments? Would people be more positive to this game and more forgiving of it if it was a straight up Batman game with like the Joker in it and it was honest about being a sequel to the Arkham games? Or would they be even more negative because their expectations would be a little higher?
I think if this had been announced and it was like, this is Arkham Origins Part 2, like it's another Arkham prequel, I think that would have absolutely gotten, like, there would have been the haters who would have been like, oh, I'm sick of Batman. I want, like, the thing that I find kind of ironic is if the game that many are clamoring for right now with like Batman and more traditional villains and the story that we all kind of have known and played through for many years now, I think if that had been released, people would be asking essentially for Gotham Knights, because that's what people were asking for even during Arkham Knight. We were getting a lot of like, I want to play as the Bat family. I want more boss battles. I want to be able to ride the Batmobile or the Batbike around the city without having to fight as a tank every 2 minutes. So I think that you're not really going to be able to please everyone at this point. And I think that that's even something across the board that we're just seeing with games in general. I think that just in the last few years, even people who like games used to have very positive followings before release. And now it often feels very negative without much cause. And it feels very like vitriolic a lot of times. And the problem with it is, I think that there's some entitlement there, and I think that is just that notion of being owed the game that you want specifically, when no game is going to hit every single checkbox for you. Um, and frankly, a lot of the things that gamers ask for aren't possible from a technological perspective. So it is definitely tricky. I think in the case of Gotham Knights, there has been some extra hate going toward it. And there are many people that I just kind of want to be like, well, you don't have to play the game. Like, I think that's a very valid solution. If it doesn't look like it's what you're going to enjoy, then there's no need to really complain about it or hate on it, because just, spend your money on God of War Ragnarok or Hogwarts Legacy. Like, there's plenty of awesome games coming out. I think the big problem with Gotham Knights in terms of response is that it's not Arkham.
Yeah.
That the fact that it's a reboot, the fact that people aren't endeared to these iterations of the characters yet, and I think the fact that they've changed the gameplay model so drastically. They've changed the combat, they've changed the stealth, they've changed the art style, they've changed the map, they've changed the traversal. Like, everything is different. And I think Arkham, again, did it so well that it's very hard to feel like this is going to live up to that. I personally think that they have a great shot at doing it. I think that they have a great shot of being as good as Arkham was, and maybe even better. Like, there are many things that seem improved over the Arkham games, but I think that really is the big disconnect, is that the fact that this is not the next Arkham game. And I think that that's what people were anticipating from 2015 to 2020. There was a 5-year gap where I think the question was not even necessarily what's the next Batman game going to look like. I think a lot of people were thinking, what's the next Arkham game going to be? And so then when we got this and it felt very underwhelming to some people, I think that was tricky. And I'll even be honest in that I kind of had the opposite reaction that a lot of people have had, where I was not one of the most hyped people when I saw the trailer. I thought it looked cool, but I was underwhelmed to a degree because I'd been expecting a Batman game. And it's taken me like almost the full marketing cycle to get to the point where I've been able to accept what it is. And I'm very excited for it. I had faith in the developers from the beginning, but I think it's taken me a bit to really see the vision. But I do think that was kind of that very difficult piece. Like, that's why there's so much trepidation, is that it's not Arkham, and that it's so new, and that it does things that I think are debatably better or worse than Arkham, just depending on your play style.
Yeah, and there's been some bias too, because I keep seeing people assume that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is going to be the better game, even though, have we gotten any gameplay for it? Because I think we've gotten 2 trailers. I don't know have we gotten any gameplay for it? I just want to make sure.
We did get a gameplay trailer, but no demo. So we've like clips of gameplay, but not like a significant like walkthrough or anything.
Yeah, because people keep having this sort of bias towards Kill the Justice League, where they're like, well, that game is Rocksteady, so therefore I have more faith in this game than Gotham Knights, just because Gotham Knights is a different developer, and I guess one they don't have as much faith in. And I think that's on the one hand, it's I'm in between saying that's fair and saying that that's biased, and I know those are 2 completely opposite opinions. But it's like I've been more excited for Gotham Knights because I just like the story elements there. I like bringing the sidekick characters into the front and not have to have them all overshadowed by Batman constantly. And I like the idea. We just heard that we're going to have like a 4-player co-op mode. So there is a lot of things to like about Gotham Knights. I'm just feeling like it's sort of this once again, this bias that they have, that if it's Rocksteady, then that automatically means it's going to be great. These are 2 games, like a lot of it was because of COVID. They've been in development hell for a long time. I think Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was in development hell even longer, because that is a game that seems like it's the product of the Suicide Squad 2016 movie. There are a lot of choices with the characters and the designs that are like washed over from that movie. So you can see that. I think it was in development since 2016, if not 2015. I think that. Go ahead.
Yeah, believe it or not, Suicide Squad was actually over at Warner Brothers Games Montreal. It was being developed alongside a Damian Wayne Batman Arkham game. It was a sequel to Arkham Knight. Those games were in the works from about 2014 to 2016, and then they both got Like the Damian Wayne game was actually going to get announced at the Game Awards 2016. That's what Jason Schreier, a very reputable journalist, has confirmed. They pulled it last minute and rebooted it to Gotham Knights. Rocksteady took over Suicide Squad, and I think that the reason that there is a bit of a bias is because Rocksteady has proven themselves much more than Warner Brothers Games Montreal has. And I also think, like, arguably they do have the higher concept in that you're taking on the Justice League, whereas Gotham Knights it's another Batman game that removes what many would argue are kind of those staple points of a Batman game. So I get it. But with that being said, I'm with you that I'm really excited to see all these other elements come to the front and get to play as these other characters and have something that's going to feel like it shares DNA with what we've seen before, but have a very distinct approach as well.
Yeah, I guess I'm just, this is my own bias. I just think that the Batman Gotham Knights game seems a bit more interesting. And then maybe it's just because I haven't been as into the Suicide Squad and I got kind of tired of it. I guess the Suicide Squad from James Gunn, it was fine as a movie, but it wasn't for me. Not a lot of James Gunn's films are, except for the Guardians movies. So maybe that's a little bit of my own bias against the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game, especially since I'll like watch a trailer and it'll be like the designs will be like a lot of the characters from that Suicide Squad 2016 movie. And I'm a bit like, haven't we moved on from that at this point? So maybe that's my own bias, but like I'm just from the point of view of I've been excited for Gotham Knights this whole time, and then but people are like, no, Kill the Justice League is going to be so much better. I'm like, well, we haven't seen anything from that game really. We've just gotten like little teases for the story and the characters and maybe a little bit for the gameplay, but we really don't know how it's going to be. So topic, I'm switching over topics. So we've talked about gameplay, Kill the Justice League. Oh, here's a question I haven't asked yet. Who will be your main in this game, Irogen?
So I want to play as each of the characters, but I'm definitely going to be starting off as Batgirl. I just think that will, like, the developers have said this, and just from gameplay I can tell, but she seems like she's going to be the most delicate transition from playing Arkham to getting into Gotham Knights. She has kind of the same traversal move set. Her combat looks similar enough to the free flow combat that I think for me it will help me start to get into the learning curve of playing Gotham Knights instead of Arkham. But I am very excited to try all the characters. I know a lot of people have been hating on Red Hood, but a lot of the people who played the game have said Red Hood is the best. I'm hoping to I know he's non-lethal, but I want to play him like John Wick, and then I'm excited to play as Robin and Nightwing as well. I'm excited to try all of them. Nightwing's one of my favorite characters in comics. Barbara Gordon's one of my favorites as well. So I'm excited to play as those two. Red Hood just looks the most distinct. And then Robin, I think, will have an interesting relationship to Batman as he is the like newest member of the Bat family. So I think from a narrative perspective, he has a lot of interesting things to bring to the table as well. And I also love stealth, and they've said he's their stealth main character. So I'm excited for all of them, but I'm starting with Batgirl. What about you?
I've kind of been going back and forth between Batgirl and Nightwing because I love both those characters, but I'm probably it really depends because I like characters that have a speed element to them because I don't like it when I'm playing a game and I feel like I have to push the character. Like some of the gameplay makes it like that. Like for example, when I used to play Super Smash Brothers Brawl, if you played as Samus, then you had more power, you had more brute strength. But if you played as Zero Suit Samus, then you didn't have as much strength, but you had a lot more flexibility. And I wanted that flexibility instead. I didn't need the strength. So I see maybe both Nightwing and Batgirl as being those two characters, but I don't know. I'm probably gonna do Nightwing as my main character because I really Dick Grayson's my favorite Robin. I probably have enjoyed Nightwing stories more than Batgirl just because I think they've given Nightwing better material. So I'll probably switch between those two, but right now I'm leaning towards Nightwing. I'm also looking forward to Tim Drake in this game because I feel like he hasn't been used very much over the years. I guess he was in the Arkham games, but I just feel like post Arkham games, we've usually just had Damian Wayne be the Robin after Dick Grayson, and he's been the Robin, and we never get to see Tim Drake in anything. So I'm really looking forward to having him finally shine in this game, hopefully. And then Red Hood, I mean, they have kind of turned him into the Thing, you have to admit. He's like the brute of the team. And I guess I get that because it's like you've got two characters who are kind of flexible and stealthy, or three characters, if you will, who are really like that. So I guess they just wanted to have Jason Todd be the character who's like the Hulk of the team. And I understand that, but it is a bit frustrating because that's not who Jason Todd is, unless you like associated being people associate Jason Todd as being a darker, grimmer character. I guess you can associate that as Kobe is coming on, so we will say. I guess you can associate that with brute strength. Some people do. I guess that's what it is. Okay, we have our third guest today. Kobe, can you hear me? We cannot hear him just yet. He is coming on, though. Oh, he needed to fix his audio. Anyway, we'll see him in just a minute. Yep. So 3 out of 4 people on tonight. Thank you all for joining. I hope you're enjoying the stream. I really appreciate everybody for showing up. I am very close to... Oh, he's back. He's back. Can we hear him this time? Let's see. We can hear him, I think. There's like... Hello? Oh, we can hear him. Yay.
There he is.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it's a little muffled, but let's see. I'll just ask you a question. Who's your main going to be in Gotham Knights? And you can answer.
What about now? Can you hear me better now?
Oh, that's great. That's great.
That's much better.
Okay, great. I was getting dinner, and it took forever to like get the check and get longer than I was expecting.
Oh, it's okay.
So I apologize about that.
Thank you for coming.
My main will be Batgirl, of course. Who else would it be? Come on.
That's what Irogen said.
Let's see. And then who do I want to play second? I don't know. Red Hood looks really lame. He's like 4th. And then maybe Robin number 3, perhaps. But I think I'll just as Batgirl and then go from there. That's what I think I'm going to do.
Okay, I'm sorry, Kobe. You are cutting out in and out just a little bit. Restream works best in the Chrome browser. If you switch your are you in Chrome?
No. Let me switch to that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I am going to read some of the chat. By the way, I was going to say I'm about 300 hours away from monetization, so thank you guys all for your support of the channel. Explain to me like I'm dumb, Irogen. Can you do like paid super chats when you monetize? Is that like a part of the package?
Yeah, when you get monetization, you can get ad revenue, and then you can do super thanks, super chat. So it's super helpful for creators who like make sure to watch as much content from your favorite creators as you can so they can get monetization. And even just every now and then a little donation does go a long way. We take time away from like our real jobs like 9-to-5s to be on here trying to provide entertainment. So it is a very helpful tactic. And again, it's totally voluntary and you never have to, but yeah, that would be an awesome resource for any creator.
Yeah, I just want to get to the super chats place. It's helpful, and also it helps me to single out questions I'm going to answer. She don't have a super chat, can't donate. Yeah, I don't have it yet. I'm 300 hours away from being able to monetize. So let's see what people have been saying. I hate how Jason is the muscle for the Bat family. I hope they give Harley a classic Harley skin. I'm fine with what it is. Like the outfit's not great, but it's still Jester themed. Okay, let's see. If they used assets from the Damian Wayne Batman game, then I'd actually be more excited to play Gotham Knights. The story trailer and gameplay trailer that Rocksteady dropped long ago looked much better in every aspect than anything we saw from Gotham Knights till this moment. Now, those are fighting words for Gotham Knights fans. Okay. Do you think cutting last gen will hurt the game a lot? Once again, that's explained to me like I'm dumb. What does last gen mean, Irogen?
That's the PS4 and or Xbox One.
Oh, I got it. So wait, you can't. So wait a second. So it's only available on PS5?
Yeah. So when they delayed the game like a year ago, or maybe it was longer at this, I don't even know. But when they delayed it from 2021 to 2022, they also cut the previous versions of the game on PS4 and Xbox One, just because they said they weren't able to get the tech to run correctly on those.
Well, I'll tell you that sucks because those are the two game consoles that I have. So I would have to get an entirely new console just to play this game. This whole time, I didn't know. I thought it was going to be PS4 and Xbox One still.
Yeah, I will say the communication from the end of Warner Brothers Games Montreal has been pretty rough on things like that. Like, and I think that's even like the 30 frames per second thing. I think the bigger issue than that it plays at 30 frames per second is the fact that they announced it like 6 days before launch in their Discord. I can understand why people who are really banking on a performance mode would be disappointed. And yeah, I think cutting the current generation versions of the game and only releasing it on next gen, I mean, that's a really rough move, and especially when they've advertised it as being on both versions of the consoles.
Yeah, I thought this entire time that's a bummer.
Do you have a PC that would run them?
I'm not sure. Probably not. I kind of just use my brother's stuff for this sort of thing. So, and right now I can't afford much else. So I didn't even know that because I was hearing people complain about 30 frames per second. I was like, I don't really matter to me. I was hearing people complain about no performance mode, and I thought that's fine. And then this, and I'm like, oh, so that's something that would upset me that I didn't know until this moment. I didn't see any advertising for that, or if I did, I forgot about it.
Yeah, it was like a Twitter. They tweeted it basically. And again, it was like quite a long time ago. It was like at least a year ago, if not more.
Well, sometimes games just need better marketing, because that might be. I've been rooting for this game until this point. It could still be amazing. It could still be a great game. I'm not sure if I'll be able to play it right away. I think if they had to choose, they opted for higher fidelity modes because they emphasized Gotham as a world so much that a higher fidelity would make it seem more immersive from that standpoint. I don't know, but anyway, I'll probably be watching the cutscenes before I actually play the game. We'll have to see. How much do PS5s cost right now?
Right now, it's hard to know on availability. I think if Kobe can get back on here, I know they were doing a deal with the Series S, which is by far the weakest of the three next gen consoles, but there was like some deal where you could get it for relatively cheap, like I think $200 to $300 range. I think that the PS5, and the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's $400 for the like digital version and then $500 to get it with a disc drive.
Okay, Kobe is back on. Kobe. We're kind of hearing him.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear us, Kobe?
Yeah.
Okay, we can kind of hear you. Can you say a sentence or two?
1, 2, 3. Hello. Hello.
Okay, I think we can hear you as long as the chat doesn't complain. Okay, me and Irogen were just talking about. Okay, so I just found out a shock to me, and I don't know why I didn't realize this. So I just found out that Gotham Knights is not going to be available on Xbox One or PS4, which is a bummer for me because those are the two consoles that I have access to. I have not been able to afford a PS5. And we were just talking about cost, and I looked it up, and it's like $800 right now, which I cannot afford. he was saying that there was some sort of deal on the Series X, but that doesn't work or something.
It should be a deal on the Series X.
Let's see. PS Series X. You're still cutting in and out quite a bit.
Okay. Interesting.
See, Series X, Series S. I'm seeing like $600 or $650 at the very cheapest. So I'm not playing Gotham Knights anytime soon. It comes out in 5 days. I certainly do not have $900 to shell out for a PS5 in this time. Irogen, are you still there?
Yep. Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, so I'm wondering. Oh, did both of them cut out? Hope not. So we are going on almost 7 o'clock. Hopefully, next time I'll try to do like Skype because I think that we have better time on Skype. I'm just used to using Restream, but it is very picky about your browser and your sound.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, Jake, what consoles do you have?
So I have a bunch of last gen ones. I still have the 360. I have an Xbox One, a PS4, and then a PS5 that I was able to get back right before Miles Morales because I got very lucky and had the like every now and then PlayStation reaches out to some of its users and like lets them hop on their store and like basically I got it for retail price rather than having to buy it through some scalper on eBay or something. So I was able to just get on their official store and get the digital PS5 for $400. So I've had it for a bit. So that's, yeah, primarily I've been playing on PS5, except for some of those older games that aren't backwards compatible.
Yeah, I just kind of I unashamedly leech off of my brother's stuff, but so right now that's all I can afford. But I wanted a PS5 because I wanted to play Spider-Man 2, and I think we haven't gotten any updates on that game in a while. But that is definitely a game that I would buy an entire console for. Gotham Knights, I'd also want. I mean, I want to hear how it goes. I want to hear how it turns out. So, but I'm still probably not going to be able to play it at least on a console for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, I will put aside my disappointment because I should have known that. But to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that Gotham Knights is even coming out because it took so long to get us to that point. Okay. So let's see. I think we have covered a ton of it. So I guess the last thing that we haven't talked about with me and you was the Court of Owls in this game. There certainly have been a lot of things pertaining to the Court of Owls recently because we have this game and then we have a lot of talk about how in the Batman 2 might feature the Court of Owls. So first of all, why do you think that there's been such an emphasis on the Court of Owls all of a sudden? Is it because they haven't really been done before? Is it because there might be somebody behind the scenes pushing them? What do you think?
I think that the Court of Owls have really been pushed into the mainstream just because it's a very new addition to Batman's Rogues Gallery, but it's one that seems to have gained as much popularity as many of Batman's A-listers amongst comics readers. The Court of Owls was a very popular run from Scott Snyder, and people just seem to really like these guys. And so I think that the Warner Brothers, as in their films and games division, have seen that huge boost in popularity from the Court of Owls and are just really wanting to market off of that. And again, I think they're a great member of Batman's Rogues Gallery. I don't know that I'd necessarily say that I like them much better than like the League of Assassins or some of the other like army or cultish members of Batman's Rogues Gallery. But with that being said, I think that they have really interesting ties to Gotham's history, and I am interested to see what this game does with them. And yeah, like you mentioned, it sounds like a lot of filmmakers are interested in bringing them to film. So I'm interested to see what creative ideas are kind of lying in store for us.
Okay, Kobe is back, and if his audio works or it doesn't work, he's staying on. So, Kobe, can you hear me?
Yes, hopefully it's not breaking up. I hear you
Oh
guys.
my goodness, it's working. Yay. Yay, it's working. Thank you so much for coming on. I did not mean to pressure you or intrude or anything.
No, not at all. Sorry, I've been having technical issues.
Okay, it's okay. So I'm going to run through really quick and ask you a lot of the questions that I asked Jake. So my first question that I asked him was, what is his overall feelings to the Gotham Knights game? Because right before the stream, I just got done reading some hate comments towards Gotham Knights on Twitter. Part of it was over the gameplay that they released recently. Part of it was over the 30 frames per second thing. So I just want to know, what are your overall thoughts on this game? Are you really excited for it? Are you apprehensive about it? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm kind of getting obliterated on Twitter because I made a tweet about the 30 FPS thing and said it wasn't that big of a deal and that I think that we should look forward to playing the game. I mean, listen, the way that I'm going into this is that we now have 4 or 5 days left before the game comes out, and I want to go into the game with as positive of an attitude as possible, especially given the circumstances and situations leading up to it. And I raised the point that many people have disagreed with, that Arkham City and Arkham Knight had zero negative hype buzz around it before it came out. It was all excitement and enthusiasm and people excited to play through the story and campaign. And humans were social beings, and we're easily pressured by certain social situations or pervasive beliefs. And I think a lot of people are hating Gotham Knights before it comes out just because they're being told to do so by Twitter. And that's just this belief that I have, and I've seen that consistently. As for the 30 FPS thing in particular, we can debate that. I guess I'm too naive to even notice the difference between 30 and 60 frames. But my thinking is also that, well, I don't know, Arkham Knight it was in 30 frames, and nobody was freaking out about that not having a performance mode. Yes, it's 7-8 years ago. I understand that this game should have that. Yes, in theory, it should have performance mode. It should. And the fact that ray tracing is mandatory is kind of weird. But anyway, there's things about the game that are weird and I'm maybe not thrilled about, but I also don't want to go into the story with these certain negative preconceptions, because imagine how miserable you will be playing the game if the entire time you're playing the game, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is 30 frames per second. You're going to hate it just by default, you're not going to like it. So why would you do that to yourself? Again, criticism is valid and I understand it. And I think that some of the backlash might be good, because it would be great to have a performance mode patch come out in 2023 for the game. But yes, I think that a lot of people are really, really bent out of shape about the game. And I don't know. That's just not the approach I'm taking to it. The approach I'm taking to it is, well, Scott Snyder consulted on the narrative of the game. WB Games Montreal is doing their first game in a decade. Arkham Origins was great, looked good, played well. This game has some concerns about it. There's no question about it. But am I going to go into the game and be whining about 30 frames per second every single cutscene that I'm playing? No, because I want to enjoy the story and experience the game with as positive a mindset as possible. And if the story sucks, then the story sucks. Then I'll get on my YouTube channel and shit on it. But am I going to shit on the game before I've even played it? No, I will not. So that's my take on it.
I'm going to say something, and it's going to offend the chat, but I feel like gamers can be whiny, and they can be very, very entitled. People get upset at me for saying that, but with this game in particular, I feel like, I think I've said this to Jake before you came on, but I feel like people are almost looking for things to be upset about with this game. But I could be wrong on that, because we got that first cutscene with Babs and Dick, and they're talking and about Batman, where they're going to go. And my brother was watching this cutscene in the background, and all of a sudden I hear him yell, "This is terrible! and so he just thinks that so he's still I think he's still halfway interested about it. But I just found out something I did not know about the game, that I thought this whole time, I thought it's going to be on Xbox One and it's going to be on PlayStation 4 and I'm going to get to play it. And then I just found out that no, they cut that, and I didn't even know about this. So I don't know if it's I don't know, Kobe. Do you think people are looking for things to actively hate on with this game, be it the frame rate or the cutscenes or whatever it is? Or do you think that they've done a really bad job of their decision making with this game and marketing it? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to belittle or downplay the concerns that fans have, because yes, there are some valid concerns. Again, going back to the frame rate thing, yes, ideally all games should have 60 frames per second, and yes, I do think that if Spider-Man PS4 has 60 frames performance mode, then this game should too. You know, I understand, but what I'm saying is, will I let that sort of ruin the gameplay and story experience before I've even had a chance to experience the game? No, the answer is no. I'm not going to let that happen. And to your point, Teresa, I think a lot of people on Twitter are letting that happen. They are so pissed off about the game. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Call of Duty fans. And I know this because I'm a Call of Duty fan. But what Call of Duty fans do is every year they whine and complain about the game, and then they still buy it. So they're like, oh my God, this game sucks. It's going to be terrible. By the way, I do this too. So I'm like, oh my God, I played the Modern Warfare 2 beta. It's like, this game sucks. It's terrible. But I still bought it. And I kind of think that the same thing is happening with the Arkham community in this game, is that everyone in the Arkham community is whining about the game and saying it sucks, and the frame rate and this and that, the cutscenes, the story sucks. Everything's terrible, but they're still buying it. So, you know, at that point, it's just a weird dynamic. And again, I get it. I do it every year with Call of Duty 2. So I don't necessarily blame fans for that, but that is kind of the dynamic that I think is happening here, is that you know, sometimes the most passionate fans are the ones who whine the most. And that's kind of what I think is happening here. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's to be expected at this point. That's just the way that it works. But to your point, Teresa, I have noticed a little bit of that. I'm curious to know what Jake.
Jake, do you want to give your thoughts? I know you've said this a little bit before on the stream, but do you want to reiterate your thoughts to Kobe on that?
Yeah, I think that what you both have kind of touched on is it's a pretty accurate assessment of what's going on here. I think that, Kobe, you've brought some interesting nuance to it that I hadn't considered, which is that it's not necessarily so much people hating just to hate. Because as I was kind of mentioning before you hopped on, I think that, you know, one thing that I brought up was, you know, if you're not interested in the game, or if you have all of these issues with the game, no one's making you buy it, you know, like, and I think that that's the weird entitled bit that Teresa was kind of leaning into, is like, no one is like putting a gun to your head and saying, okay, give me your wallet and give me $70. Like, you have to buy this game, you know, like, if it doesn't look like a fun experience, then save $70, put it toward Hogwarts Legacy, put it toward God of War Ragnarok. Like, but I think that you're right in the sense that the reason that people are upset is because this is a game that, kind of regardless of what it is, they are going to drop $70 on it, because it's an open world AAA DC game, and the majority of fans for this are DC fans. Yeah, I think that it is tricky. I think that there are a large fragment of most communities at this point in the games industry that do just have an entitled opinion about a lot of things. I think that moving away from the Arkham continuity didn't necessarily do tons of favors for the Arkham community in terms of how they favor this game. But yeah, it has been interesting. There have been a lot of things that I've seen really heavy amounts of backlash for that really shouldn't be quite as extreme as people are making it out to be. So I do think that there are members of the community looking for things to hate and looking for things to be outraged by when it comes to Gotham Knights. But I also would argue that that's a large minority. Whenever people have like done polls on how many people actually care about the 60 frames per second thing, it's like around 10 to 15% usually that actually have a problem with it. So I think it's just, you're right. I think the most passionate fans are the loudest, but I don't know that the ones who are hating on the game really comprise the majority of people looking at this game. I think a general fan of Batman is probably fairly excited for it.
Yeah, I said this a little bit earlier that I'm not so harsh when it comes to gameplay and things like frame rate. For me, if I'm invested in what the game is, and this is a game that is taking the quote unquote sidekick characters, the villains who we haven't seen get so much spotlight recently, we're elevating those characters, and so I'm on board with it. I like the idea of a 4-player co-op mode. Not sure how soon I'm going to get to actually play the game because that would mean getting a PS5, shelling out like $700 for that at least, money which I do not have right now. But that said, gameplay wise, all it needs to be is it just can't be the Avengers by Square Exonox. I can't even pronounce their name, but they don't deserve to have their name pronounced. Anyway, I hate the Avengers game. I was looking forward to that for so long, and similar to Gotham Knights, that was an experience where people were bringing up all these complaints with the Avengers game, and I'm just like, but I've wanted an Avengers game for so long, and so I would just put off. I'm sorry, Warrior Woman 91 is in the chat, so I have to say, welcome, Warrior Woman 91. Thank you for coming to the chat. Hello, thank you. And with her, she brought about like 31 viewers for us. Now we've got a lot more watching. Woo! Anyway. So with the Avengers game, they had, similar to Gotham Knights, there were a lot of complaints about it, stuff that I just kind of shifted away. Like, no, people are just complaining this game is going to be amazing. They just have to wait and see. And then I found the game just unplayable. Like, I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't enjoyable in any way, shape, or form. They made it so you couldn't even have like multiple save slots on it. So as long as Gotham Knights is not the Avengers, then I'm fine with it. So another thing I asked Jake Kobe is I asked him how he felt about the villains of the game. They've really only been advertising like 3 of them, apart from the Court of Owls. They've been advertising Mr. Freeze, Clayface, and Harley Quinn. So what I asked Jake is, and he did a video on this himself, are these the only 3 major side villain quests we're going to get? Would he be satisfied with that? Are there other characters that are maybe waiting in the wings as DLC? What do you think about that?
Well, there's been a lot of conversation about this, and a lot of people have been asking me about the the trophies for the game that have leaked, and then also there have been some leaks in like the storybook and that sort of thing, and I've really tried to avoid those. So one thing that I had heard about the villains, though, is that there might not be as many villains as we were anticipating. You know, you look at the Batman Arkham games, and 10 to 15 villains are safely used in City and Night. Asylum, not so much, just a few. It looks like this game will be closer to a game like Asylum in terms of the number of villains used. Again, that's just hypothesis, and the trophies could be misleading or not list everything, but it does look like these 3 villains are heavily featured in their side missions, and it looks like the side missions might take like 2 hours for each of these characters, and for that reason they don't need that many side missions, but rather there's a good amount of length to each of these side missions. So I will say that nothing but the villains excites me that much, if I'm being completely honest with you. Even the canceled Damian Wayne Batman game seemed a little bit more exciting in some sense, because they were using like Grandma White Rabbit and just other weird stuff like that, just out of left field. With this game, it's just like, yeah, okay, it's Harley Quinn, it's Clayface, it's Mr. Freeze. It's basically like Arkham City villains, which is fine, I guess. It's cool to see their take on these villains. The take is a little bit different, and of course, in this case with Harley Quinn, there is no Joker, because Joker seems to be dead. At least it appears that way. So a couple of things that are interesting and new little twists that they can make on these characters and the dynamics that they have. But overall, that's my take, is nothing but the villains really impresses me all that much. But we never know what surprises we have in store, and we never know if the Joker will end up being Talon anyway. Wouldn't surprise me. This is WB Games Montreal, after all, we're talking about here.
Yeah, we had this conversation where me and Jake are hoping that they are committing to this Batman is dead, and supposedly they've said that the Joker is dead. I kind of am more with you though, Kobe, where I just feel like if they want to take Batman and Joker out of the closet just to get some more cash from them, then they will. Even if they have just a DLC that's like, this is the Joker DLC, then they'll use it. Arkham City, that was 2013. No, that was 2011, wasn't it?
2011.
2011. So relatively, that was almost 10 years ago. So I don't know. I just feel like we haven't been getting as much from Mr. Freeze and Clayface in media, unless it's like a parody of those characters. So I just enjoy those characters getting a spotlight. I actually do really like this take on Harley, at least what I've seen of it. I don't think her voice actor is the best, but I like this idea that they said this in once again, I'm known for just hating on the direction that the character has gone in elsewhere. So I appreciated that the creators of this game said, okay, we didn't want to do just the manic pixie dream girl stuff and just keep it at that. We wanted a darker take on the character. We wanted to kind of, I don't want to say fill the void of the Joker, but she's sort of become her own version of the Joker. And so I like that. I like that we're like elevating some of the lesser, I don't want to say lesser used, because Harley has definitely been used a lot in the past 5 years, but we're taking kind of the sidekick characters, maybe the villains that we haven't seen as much, like they always go with the Joker and they always go with Two-Face, and we're elevating them just like we're elevating Dick Grayson and Barbara and Tim Drake. So I'm actually looking forward to those characters. Before we go on, because I want to ask you about some things that I had thought of regarding Kill the Justice League. But before we move on to that, I want to ask you what you think of Jason Todd in this game. What do you think of them essentially turning him into the Hulk of the team? I argued that they are doing it from the gameplay perspective that the other three characters are kind of stealth and agility based, and I think they just wanted to have one character that was like brute strength based. So what do you think about what they've done with Jason Todd?
So it's interesting you say that, and you might be right, I might be wrong, but that is not my perception of how he plays in terms of gameplay. My understanding was that Red Hood is a ranged attacker to the point that it's almost like laughable, to the extent that he is so range spammy that he resembles like Deathstroke in Injustice 2, or Deadshot in Injustice 2, or Deathstroke in Injustice 1, et cetera, in the sense that you're so rangy and just spamming ranged attacks all the time, that's the best way to do it. But in terms of the way he looks, yes, he does look the way that you're saying. But again, I could be wrong. And also there is some discrepancy, because with the builds, you can kind of build your skill tree around different types of combat, obviously. So perhaps you might be right there. But on a broader note with Red Hood, and the thing that I'm excited to see with the game more broadly is that these characters seem to have arcs in the story, and I'm just really excited to see how the characters progress and evolve throughout the story, because that is something that I'm very interested in seeing in the game, and something that I think will be a strong suit for it, in the sense that they've already talked about how Red Hood starts off like more how you would expect in like Under the Red Hood, for instance, in terms of his behavior and demeanor. And towards the end, he kind of becomes a little bit more of a team player. So anyway, I'm really excited to see that with the gameplay in particular. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, but I'm curious to hear what you think about it.
Well, I'm just, from a character perspective, I don't like it when they change a character just to fit what I perceive as not a game mode, just an element of the gameplay. But I understand how they wanted to differentiate the characters in some ways. But Red Hood is kind of stereotyped as like the dark of the Batman sidekicks. Like he's the one who's fallen. He's the one who was always the bad boy, and then he got killed, and then he came back to life. Even though someone was pointing out to me the other day that in early Jason Todd comics, when he was Robin, he was actually kind of a much more lighthearted character. But anyway, I just feel like they're taking things that we associate, like maybe we associate a dark character and more as like the brute strength character. So that's what I feel like they're doing. And I understand, like, that's my perception, that they're doing it just to differentiate the characters. I understand why it's not a deal breaker for me, but I kind of wish we got a more traditional Red Hood, because he doesn't really look like Jason Todd to me. I agree. He just looks like a different character. So Warrior Woman 91 says anyone who gets blocked by her goes straight to the Nether in Minecraft. Yes, you don't want to get blocked by Kelly. She should become a moderator on this stream. But Jake, really quick before we move on, do you have any final thoughts on Red Hood and his look in the game?
I think my biggest takeaway from Red Hood is I really like the actor who's playing him, Stephen O. Young. He was Mr. Negative in Spider-Man, and he knocked it out of the park there. And the acting for Jason Todd feels really on point to me. I do understand that people who are very used to a specific look for him, might be a bit baffled by some of the design changes. And on top of that, I think more than anything, um, even though people who've been playing the game have said he's the most fun to play, I do think that he's looked the clunkiest from the gameplay demos. And I don't know, it seems like what has people the most up in arms is that like mystic leap ability that he has for traversal. That isn't really rooted much in traditional comics or abilities of Jason Todd. I know that there's like obscure issues that people will point me to that will say otherwise, but I understand that that is not the traditional direction to take Red Hood in. I think it's an interesting idea, but we'll have to wait to play the game to see how it works. But again, with many things with Gotham Knights, I can understand how some fans are kind of being put off by just a lot of the changes that are being made to really accommodate the gameplay loop of the game and the team dynamic, as you mentioned.
Okay, so I want to transition from that to the other two questions that Kobe wasn't able to be a part of when we started. The first one was, I know this is kind of clunky out of context, but the first question that I had for Jake was, is part of the lack of hype for this, I don't want to say lack of hype, just the negativity and that people have for this game, is part of it that it isn't a straight up Batman game, in that it's not a straight up Arkham sequel? Are people more negative towards the game, Kobe, because it's not really what they wanted in the first place? They wanted like a straight up Arkham sequel?
Yes, exactly. Going back to what Jake and I were discussing a little bit ago, absolutely. There is this sort of captive audience of people that were going to buy this game no matter what it was. And of course, if it was a Condiment King game, perhaps not. But because this is a DC AAA superhero video game featuring the Bat family, there is a captive audience of people that will buy it no matter what. Doesn't matter what the game looks like. I mean, it could look terrible and people will still buy it. And I, frankly, am somebody that's in that camp. It didn't matter how bad this game looked. I was still going to buy it because it was the natural predecessor of Arkham Knight. And I'm a YouTuber for the game. There's a whole over 100,000 people on my community that are interested in these games as well. And I know for a lot of my audience, it's the exact same story, that this game is not something that you had to decide whether you were or were not going to buy. You're buying it on day one. And then the question is, since it's a guarantee that you're buying the game, then you sort of have the right to some extent to be critical of it because, as I said, you're buying it no matter what. So even people that say, well, I wanted the game to be 60 FPS. Okay, but you're still buying the game at 30 frames per second. So that's setting you up for disappointment to some extent. So I think that that's part of what we're seeing here is the disconnect from reality and expectation, but also the fact that there is this captive audience of people that are going to buy the game no matter what. And those people are, myself included again, are going to be the most vocal in terms of their complaints and critiques because it's not like they can just say, well, it's 30 frames. I don't want to buy it, so I'm out. But instead, what they're going to say is, well, I'm buying the game no matter what. So this is a big disappointment. And, Face 23 BKNY said that he or she canceled their pre-order, but that is not the majority of people. Most people are complaining about the game, but will still buy it. And I think that that is actually the case for even more people, by the way, when the positive word of mouth comes out about the game, about some of the plot leaks and or just details about the story that will get people excited. I think that positive word of mouth will carry the game quite a bit. Whether the game will sell well, I don't know, but I do know that that's part of what's happening, I think, in terms of disappointed fans.
Yeah, and we have another question here that kind of leads out of that a bit because I've just seen this bias because this is being done by WB Montreal, and then Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is being done by Rocksteady. And I was talking to Jake about how I just think that I'm just grateful that Gotham Knights is coming out at all, because with a game like Kill the Justice League, first it was going to come out in 2021. I could have sworn they said it was going to come out in 2021. Then it was coming out in 2022. And then they're like, oh no, it's coming out next year. I think it's coming out next year. I'm not sure. It's a game they keep putting off. And Jake said that part of it might be because they can only release so many games at once and expect to make a profit from it. They don't want to oversaturate, so that they wanted to get out Gotham Knights first, and then Rocksteady's Kill the Justice League will come out. But I'm just seeing some kind of a bias against Gotham Knights and in favor of Kill the Justice League, even though we haven't gotten any official gameplay for that game yet. We got like a gameplay trailer that didn't really showcase how the game would be played, but people are like already putting their favor on Kill the Justice League. At least that's how I'm seeing it, because by Rocksteady, and Rocksteady did the Arkham games, and they're like, well, that means that Kill the Justice League is going to be good. I'm getting a bit frustrated, and it might be just because it might be just me. It might be, once again, just that they wanted to spread things out and make sure that they didn't have too many things released at once. But I'm getting frustrated with that other game being put off so long. It makes me question, is there something wrong with the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game? Because I remember when that thing was like in development in, I don't know, 2016. And then Jake went through kind of a history of the Damian Wayne game, how that became Gotham Knights, how Suicide Squad was originally WB Montreal. It got switched over. But what do you think about that bias where people are judging it based on the company that made it? And do you think that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League being put off is a sign against that game, or is it just them managing release dates and like the quantity of what they're releasing?
So again, I mean, I think that my opinion here might be a bit controversial. My position is that it, to some extent, is warranted that fans are more excited for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League than Gotham Knights, because Rocksteady has proven themselves to be all around a better game dev studio than WB Games Montreal. Now, that is a small sample size. It is one game versus, obviously, if you're going back to when they were making shooter games with Rocksteady many years ago, but really for a decade on the superhero video games. And so when you look at the comparison between what Gotham Knights is and what Rocksteady even did 7 to 8 years ago with older engines, an older version of Unreal, and just less technology, it does seem that Rocksteady is kind of leaps and bounds ahead of WB Games Montreal in a number of ways. In this game, for instance, I think that the voice acting in Arkham Knight compared to this game is not even close. I mean, it's not even in the same ballpark. If you're comparing the voice acting in the Arkham games to the voice acting in this game, it's not even a competition. And if you look at the graphics, I mean, you could argue that Arkham Knight looks like a better game, and it came out 8 years ago. Again, that's questionable. I don't think Gotham Knights looks bad, but again, I don't want to downplay the concerns of fans who are in many ways more objective than we might give them credit towards. I think if this game looked to them better than Arkham Knight, we wouldn't be hearing any critiques. I don't know that there's necessarily, I guess what I'm saying, a bias against WB Games Montreal. I think it's more that people haven't loved what they've seen every step of the way. And that's understandable. That's valid. I don't think that people are wrong to have the concerns that they have. And I don't think that it's necessarily because they just like WB Games Montreal less inherently than Rocksteady. I think it's actually because fans are observant and paying attention to some of the differences between the two studios.
Okay, that's a great answer. It's an ironic question for me to ask, because I think that my perception of the games might be from my own bias, because I'm just not as into Suicide Squad as I am into things related directly to Batman. So that's why I've been more excited for the Gotham Knights game, especially because Kill the Justice League seems very influenced by 2016 Suicide Squad, and I'm very much over that. So that's my own bias coming out. But I was just wondering because people just seem to have had more favor on the Rocksteady game, Kill the Justice League, even though we haven't gotten any official gameplay yet. So, so I want to talk to you both about this, both Jake and Kobe, because right in the middle of the stream, right when Kobe was just figuring out his sound, I found out something I didn't know. I found out that this game is not going to be available on PS4 or Xbox One, and that's what I was banking on this entire time. And Jake pointed out to me that they announced that about a year ago, but that they have not been very good at their communication with their fans. And so I want to know what both of you think. I guess we'll go Jake first and then to Kobe. Do you think that the lack of PR, the lack that there is a definite lack of good marketing with this game, and that is really going to damage it?
I think that it is actually probably the biggest hurdle that this game has when in terms of fighting an uphill battle against fans who are very trepidatious or opposed to certain things about this game. I think that is probably number 2, right under it not being a direct sequel to Arkham Knight in terms of hurting the game. I think that the fact that not only has critical information been sort of hidden from fans and they haven't been very transparent. As I mentioned, the whole 30 frames per second thing, it got leaked and then they addressed it on their Discord. And it's, again, like within a week before the game launches. And so now fans are up in arms right when they want people to be really invested in the game. This is not the time to have a big war with the fans over, frames per second in the game. Similarly, when they announced that the game would not be on the previous generation of consoles, they did so in a tweet, I believe. And it was just kind of very out of nowhere. So like people like you, Teresa, who are very much banking on the game coming out on PS4 and Xbox One, it doesn't surprise me at all that information was not relayed to you because, again, just a tweet that was kind of a one-off. And I think in terms of the marketing that you mentioned as well, they've shown some very cool things. I think that their, IGN first coverage was great. I liked seeing the boss battle with Harley Quinn. I liked seeing how much care they were putting into Gotham City. I liked seeing how character customization worked. That's all cool, but the marketing has changed since, like they started teasing this game in 2019, and it was this big like hashtag capture the night campaign with like images and logos, and then of the different factions, and then they had their big reveal where they were showing off like Mr. Freeze and the Court of Owls and said, all right, and then in the next few months we're going to start showing you more. And then we didn't see anything for over a year until the next DC fandom. And by the time they started showing that, then they were showing completely different things. They've not addressed what they kind of promised to address in the marketing with the factions and with the, the main story with the Court of Owls. And it doesn't seem like they've known the voice of the game during the marketing, which I think kind of does make fans trepidatious in the sense that then, I think it's a reasonable fear. Will this game even have an identity? Will the game itself know what it wants to be? Or is the marketing indicative that this game is somewhat aimless in that approach? Again, I don't think that's the case. I think it's been more that they've been trying to keep as much of the game secret as they can, and therefore what they've shown has felt a bit underwhelming. But I think that the marketing has been pretty abysmal with some high points. And I think that the communication with fans has also felt it's just lacked transparency and consistency. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'll pass it over to Kobe.
Okay.
Well, I mean, announcing it on the Discord was a pretty edgy move, especially because all the fans could use emojis to react. So there's like the middle finger emoji has like 100 buttons pressed on it, and then the thumbs down emoji. And also, come on, look, what's the name of the community manager? I think her name is Fleur Marty, I believe is her name. Wow, what a bad position to put her in. Way to throw her under the bus. Make her announce that 6 days before. Like, come on, that's not putting her in a great position to be liked by the fans, if we're being honest. That's just kind of an angle that I thought about that most people probably haven't considered, but she has to be the bearer of bad news, and to put her in the situation in the situation to have to do that 6 days before the game comes out. They knew that wasn't going to go over well, and they were like, okay, well, you're our sacrificial lamb. go get them, go let them know that the game's hard locked at 30 frames. I'm sure they'll be thrilled with that. So no, I think that there are some valid concerns about the game, and the marketing hasn't been great. But to Jake's point, I don't really know. I think that part of the fact that they haven't shown much of the story is kind of encouraging. Whenever you see a movie or a video game and it reveals everything about the story in the trailer, and the trailer is just basically a representation of the film, that's a pretty surefire sign that movie or game is not going to be very good. And the fact that with this game, there really are a lot of question marks about what the story is and will be, I think that's actually a good sign, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's kind of the old sign of all publicity is good publicity. So even if there's a lot of controversy around the game, at least people are talking about it. And like you've said, again and again, like people are still going to be buying this game, and there might be a million bad reviews for it, but they're still going to buy it. So we've talked a lot about like all the concerns for the game. And so I want to just talk about the game itself, because we actually are a group of people here who are more positive on it than other people. Like I said at the beginning, I'm actually, before I found out PlayStation 5 thing, I said I'm actually really excited for the game. I know there was that one cut scene that everyone hated with Nightwing and Batgirl, but then I watched other cut scenes like with all of them together and with Harley, and I'm like, I actually think this is pretty good. I think that they should have led with these cutscenes instead. It was just like the Nightwing Batgirl one was really cheesy and everyone hated it. So let's talk about, and then Jake's really positive on it. He's come around to it, actually. So let's just talk about the game itself. And I know this is the question that we talk about every single time. But is Batman really dead? Is the Joker really dead? Like they've said to a couple fans. Do you think that this game is going to have the? Is it going to have the? Is it going to be able to commit to that? Are Batman and Joker really dead, or are they just waiting to pull these characters out? Go to you, Jake, first, and then we'll go to Kobe.
I think this is an interesting question, and I think part of it depends on how much leeway they have with the future of Gotham Knights, either in terms of DLC or sequels. I think they are being honest in the sense that I don't think Joker or Batman are going to play a huge role in this game. I do think that we're going to see more of them than maybe we're anticipating. For example, we know from the previews that there are, when you do like the training like challenge maps, Batman is there as like an AI recording to like pre-recorded to talk you through it. And so I think that we're going to get to see some interesting development and on how these characters felt about Batman and probably Joker, since he played a large role in a lot of the trauma that they've gone through. He paralyzed Barbara Gordon. He killed Jason Todd. So there are a lot of, implied pieces of the backstories of each of these characters that will feed very much into both of those characters. But I do think they will probably commit, at least in this base game, to really showcasing a Gotham City that is now reliant on the Bat family rather than Batman himself, and criminals who are no longer, being interrupted by Joker, but are kind of similarly to the Gotham Knights now in a position where they have a little bit more influence and are growing in their supervillainy. And I think that's an angle that's going to be very exciting. Now, if the game just simply is not capturing enough attention, if it's not selling enough, then I absolutely think that when we start getting DLC or when we start learning more about their second project, then yes, I do think there's a good chance that we'll start seeing a bit of a reversion to what we saw with the more classic Arkham games, just because they know that those sell. But for Gotham Knights, I don't know that they would even be allowed to market this game the way that they've marketed it unless Batman and Joker truly are not a big part of it. Because in terms of marketing, I think that if those were elements of the game, we would at least be seeing little teases to them appearing. I mean, even in Arkham Origins, when they wanted us to believe Black Mask was the main villain, they still showed off Joker's design. They said he was a side villain in the game, which of course wasn't true. But the fact that there's been none of that for Gotham Knights, I would be shocked if Batman or Joker, come back in a meaningful way. And by that, I mean like a playable Batman or a main villain Joker. I do think we could see bits and pieces of them in the game to some extent. But again, either through flashbacks or through plot points that don't necessarily dictate a change in gameplay loop or overall narrative, even at the end game. I think we're probably going to be mainly focused on these characters. And again, I think they'll reserve those characters for if the game just does not sell enough copies.
Okay, going over to you, Kobe. So do you think that they're actually committing to Batman being dead and that the Joker are dead, or do you think that these are characters that they can never let go of and that they're going to bring out of the closet?
I don't know. I go back and forth on this. Jake makes a convincing point, but part of me just feels that these characters are going to be more heavily involved than we anticipate or expect. Will they necessarily be alive? You know, I've been going back and forth on this a lot. There's a lot of ways that you can include characters without them actually being there. I mean, think about Joker and Arkham Knight, obviously. There could be some similar integration here for Bruce Wayne and flashbacks or as a hologram or through these pre-recorded video messages as clues to hint towards the Bat family finding the Court of Owls. You know, I have no idea, but part of me does think that there is some additional angle for Bruce Wayne or the Joker that we're not considering here that will generate positive word of mouth that will cause more people to buy the game. If it is true that he's not really even mentioned and he's just not there at all, that will impact their sales. So, you know, it depends. But overall, I think I agree with Jake. I think I agree with the general idea that they are focusing on these 4 new characters, and they're trying to put the spotlight on them as much as they can.
Yeah, I had a very weird thought, and I don't know if you guys are going to agree with this, but there was that picture of Bruce Wayne's gravestone with an owl over it, and it put this weird thought into my head of, okay, what if Bruce Wayne is like the leader of the Court of Owls, or he's been brainwashed into their cult or something like that? Do you think that's just way too far? Do you think that they wouldn't do that?
I mean, it's a common theory, and they're clearly teasing it in some way. I mean, at the end of that cinematic trailer with the owl landing on Bruce Wayne's gravestone, you know, I don't know. It's pretty heavy-handed. So
what do you think, Jake?
I think that just with how kind of balls to the walls this whole game has been, I wouldn't be surprised with them doing pretty much anything.
Okay, I'd be fine with them if they were to bring, because I said that I kind of like the idea of not doing Batman in this game and just letting these characters be the focus. But I don't know if I would just kind of like them doing that because it's just so crazy. I'd kind of both roll my eyes and love that because, like, oh, of course, you've got to have Batman actually be in the game. You can never let him go. But at the same time, it's like that's so crazy. I actually kind of love that. So we've almost been going for 2 hours now. We've been going for an hour and 40 minutes. So at the end of each one of my live streams, I always ask the chat if they have any questions for me, if they have any questions for my guests before we go. So, Kelly, or not Kelly. I don't know Kelly. No, I don't know who that person is. Warrior Woman 91 says, who here watched Smallville? I've watched some of Smallville, actually. Somebody, I can't speak. Anarchy 4K says that they've watched Smallville. So does anybody have any questions before we sign out? Thank you so much to Irogen and Kobe for coming on. Please check out their channels. I'll have them in my description. Thank you guys so much for supporting this chat. I can't speak because it's getting late where I'm at and I'm tired. So thank you for coming on. I cannot believe how many people I had watching the stream. Almost, I think 122 was the high point. Still got 118 people. Okay, we've got some people coming on. Somebody says game looks awful. Somebody asks, what do you think of Okay. Somebody asked, what do you think of Red Hood's non-lethal armor-piercing bullets? Non-lethal armor-piercing bullets. I feel like Red Hood would want to kill people, actually. But I guess if he's working with the Gotham Knights, then maybe he wouldn't want to.
I think it makes sense in terms of all the characters have to, like, and this kind of plays into the traversal and the combat. Like, you kind of have to keep them on a level playing field. And since the other 3 characters do not kill people, and I don't know how much this will bleed into the narrative, I'd imagine it will to some extent. But if the other 3 aren't using lethal combat. Red Hood kind of can't just by default, just based on how games like this work. They have to be pretty evenly matched. That's kind of my takeaway on it.
Okay, Warrior Woman 91 says my sister disavowed me on this stream. Darth Faison has a question asking Kobe about what he's going to be doing on the future of his channel. Do you want to answer that, Kobe? What's the future of your channel going to look like right now?
Yeah, the future of my channel is Gotham Knights comes out in 4 days. In terms of long-term plans, not thinking super long-term right now, to be completely honest with you, because I'm excited for the game to drop. 8 years. 8 years is a long time to be waiting. So we will see what happens with the game. I'm trying desperately to get a review code. I mean, desperately. I'm drifting so hard. Tweeting at Gotham Knights. I'm like adding them. I'm like 2 steps away from DMing Patrick Redding and begging. Because one of my friends who is a YouTuber, I mean, humbly put, is like a lot smaller than me, which is fine. But he got a code. And he's like, yeah, I'm like halfway through the story. I already have my review written and all of this. And I'm like, what the fuck? I've been sorry, I didn't mean to say that for. I'm like, what the hell? I've been waiting here for 8 years as a loyal YouTuber for these games, and I can't get a free code. Now, okay, admittedly, I'm in a better spot than you, because I do have an Xbox Series S, which, by the way, is what you should buy. Teresa, buy the Series S because it's like $250 instead of $800.
That's not bad.
But although the frame rate is probably like 12.
Yeah.
Series S, but we'll see.
Okay, there's somebody asked, do you think League of Shadows will be in the game? I don't think so, because Damian Wayne hasn't been teased in any way, shape, or form, or neither has anything pertaining to Ra's al Ghul in League of Shadows.
Here's the thing, though. They were making that Damian Wayne Batman game.
That's true.
And you look at this game, and there's clearly so many things about it that were inspired by that, from like the Bat Bike to some of the free roam components to some of the story dynamics. A lot of similarities have carried over from that canceled game. And part of me thinks that Damian Wayne actually might play a big role in the game and have something to do with Bruce Wayne's life or disappearance and death.
Yeah, so some people are sending me spoilers for the game right now, so I'm not reading those spoilers. Somebody said something about, what do you think about League of Shadows? Oh, no. The Lazarus Pit, I cannot speak, giving people powers in the game. I haven't heard about that. I do. Somebody.
Well, that's how it like humps the air and like projects forward and flies.
Yeah. Somebody says, do not buy Series S, LMAO. So should I listen to Kobe or should I listen to him?
Better than spending $800 on a scalped console.
I'm like, should I listen to the chat or should I listen to Kobe? I don't know. I just don't know about that. Okay, so I think we've gone long enough. Thank you guys so much. This was a very successful stream. Thank you guys so much for coming on. I'm sorry, it was called Launch Live Stream because the launch is in like 5 days, and this is the last thing I'm going to do before it comes out. So people misunderstood and thought this was me actually launching the game. No, I do not have the power to do that. I am sorry. I saw some people mad at me, like, why are you calling this the launch live stream when the game isn't launching? I'm sorry. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming on. I'm sorry that Salvage wasn't able to make it. He had to pull out in the final seconds. But thank you so much to Kobe and Jake. Once again, follow their channels. Kobe is Slickmoff. Jake is Irogen. I used to call him Irogen, and I was corrected tonight. It's Irogen. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining. I will have more videos out for the future. I am almost able to monetize